When you're in your 20s, especially in 2023, it is so difficult to mitigate what you're consuming. In a world of endless social media platforms and hip-hop music talking about drugs and bitches, it makes consuming progressive content difficult. And in the same way that you are the people you hang out with, you also are the things that you consume. The things you consume affect your thoughts, and your thoughts affect your being. Being 24 years old, I have massively prioritized the type of content that I allow into my head. And as a parallel, being a content creator myself, it makes that difficult. There's this exchange between myself and other content creators, this mutual respect that if you unfollow someone, you have a problem with them. So it's really difficult to fill your social feeds with content that you really want to see. You might have to mute profiles, as shitty as this is, to not burn your online relationships, which is something I talk about a lot behind the scenes. In today's video, instead of complaining about those things, rather, I'm gonna give you the 10 content creators that I think everyone in their 20s should follow, and even in your 30s and beyond. I'm gonna vaguely dive into what each of these people do, but bear in mind, they are not primarily content creators. They are either entrepreneurs or prominent people within their field of work that also happen to create content. Some far more than others, and a lot of which you might even recognize. Creator number 1 is David Goggins. David Goggins is a multi-award winning author. He has a crazy life story, and in general is just a professional badass.
He pulls his car by me and says, "Why the fuck are you out here?" I said, "Because you're not." Sometimes your motivation needs to be because no one else wants to fucking do it. We need doctors. We need fucking lawyers. We need dentists. We need teachers. We also need fucking savages.
David Goggins will make you feel like a bitch. And I know you guys are probably saying, Jordan, why do I want to feel like a bitch? Now, obviously, it's a generalization, but a lot of the times we can be bitches. We can be weak, we can be lazy, and David Goggins is not someone who will sugarcoat that. And I think a lot of us have people in our lives who aren't willing to tell us how it is, and David Goggins is someone who's put in the work on the back end. He's earned the validity to be able to tell you, earn enough stripes in his life to be able to call you on your shit. Now, aside from having a crazy upbringing, David Goggins became a Navy SEAL after being extremely overweight. His story's crazy. He holds the world record for most pull-ups. He is a professional at dealing with pain because he understands that those are the things that bring happiness. Your ability to practice suffering within the things you do have control over is a perfect way, and arguably the best way, to train yourself to handle suffering in the things you don't have control over. So in all the pillars of content to consume, David Goggins is the one who will call you on your shit. And I think all of us, in some regard, need to be called on our shit. Creator number 2 is Jordan Peterson. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, he is a world-renowned psychologist, he's a professor, and he is one of the most articulate and intelligent people that I've ever listened to, and his takes on both philosophy and psychology and business are all very, very useful, especially for the youth. Now, he is very political on his Twitter, I've noticed. If you're not into politics, I would not recommend that being your main source of content from him, but the way that he speaks and the way that he articulates philosophy and psychology will massively benefit you, and a lot of the things he says, like I said, apply to the youth.
If you could have what you needed and wanted, what would that be? That's a meditative question. You don't want to force an answer out of yourself. You want to ask yourself that like you would ask someone else. If I could have the friendships, if I could have the job or career, if I could have the educational pathway, what would that look like if it was optimized? And then that sets you up a goal that has some motivational force. This is worth doing.
Creators number 3 and 4 are the Hormozis. Alex and Leila Hormozi, massive players in the business space, and also have begun to dominate the content space. So not only the big power players in the entrepreneur space, but massive in the content space. Mostly because they are extremely articulate, the way that they speak, the stories they have, and the value they provide, expecting nothing in return.
A lot of people are looking for something that is very hard to find, and then they attribute their lack of success or lack of action because they don't have passion or motivation, right? And I was the same way. I watched all the TED Talks in college. Like that was like what I was like, I'm not watching YouTube, I'm watching TED Talks. And then I heard the term mental masturbation and I was like, oh, that's definitely what I'm doing.
I think a problem with business within the world of social media these days is everybody's a guru. Everyone's trying to get something out of you, which makes it really hard to understand who is actually providing real value and who's just trying to make a buck off of you. It's very clear looking at the type of business they run that they don't need to sell 99% of people anything. They're also very clear on why they do create content aside from providing value, and that is for client acquisition for their company, acquisition.com. Of all these people I'm going to name, I have probably found the most value from the business and entrepreneur side of things from these two. Again, they are extremely well spoken. Their content is extremely easy to consume. It teaches a lot of things from the core principles of entrepreneurship all the way to the specifics of sales, marketing, and how to actually operate your business at a level that they are at. Number 5 is Andrew Huberman, aka Huberman Lab. He runs a health-oriented podcast. What I like about Huberman is not only is he very unbiased with the science that he provides, the guests he has on his shows, and the conversations he's willing to have, the science backing the actual information he's providing isn't your typical money-backed bullshit science that say the government feeds us. He was one of the early advocates for cold water exposure, for getting sunlight first thing in the morning, and a ton of other things that are very applicable to your life. Very tangible things that you can change in your life today.
As far as I'm concerned, the main function of the cold for most people is going to be the discipline of doing it, the sense of resilience that you can build up over time, just being familiar with having an adrenaline in your system, and then the fact that the dopamine increases are huge and long lasting. I mean, they're like 2.5x increases. There's a colleague of mine at Stanford, Anna Lemke, who runs our dual diagnosis addiction clinic. She had a patient getting off cocaine addiction who decided to use cold ice baths as a way to kind of assist himself along the way. You know, he wasn't getting dopamine from cocaine anymore, so he decided to get it from the ice bath. The difference is cocaine gives you these sharp increases and then decreases that drop you way below baseline. But what do people do? They go seek more cocaine. It's really pernicious that way. Whereas the ice bath and cold showers will give this long arc lasting 2 to 3 hours or more. And that's really something to treasure.
And he always provides sources from where these studies were done, and they're not studies with test groups of 12 people. Going back to my point I made before. Number 6 is Chris Williamson, Chris Will X. He is a big podcaster, very articulate, asks all the right questions, has on a very great scope of guests, but also he himself is extremely well-rounded in both physical and mental health. His intelligence, philosophy is very inspirational to listen to, and the way that he articulates thoughts, like I said, the way he asks questions is extremely valuable.
Men bond by doing things, and it makes sense that men would bond by doing things because that's what they would have gone out ancestrally. We're going to take down that mammoth. Me, you, Jamie, grab spear, go get my mammoth. Right? Interestingly, it also creates a reason for why men's friendships are a little bit more shallow, because if you were to die while we were out on the hunt and then I spend the next 3 months weeping at your death, that means that I'm pretty useless. Men need to be able to cycle through friends more. So it seems like men have broader social circles but much more shallow.
Really?
Women have tighter social circles that are more deep.
And so both from a guest standpoint and also just consuming his own content and clips of him in his podcasts, it is very valuable. Number 7, Mr. Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm a big fan. Not only do I think consuming Gary's content from a business, entrepreneurial, digital, social space perspective is valuable, but I also think he's one of the big players of his caliber that actually pushes being a good person.
I believe that empathy is my ear to the ground. I think I'm more like an A&R in the music industry. I put in the work, AKA like the 1970s and 80s. I go to clubs from 8 p.m. to 2 in the morning to listen to music. I'll go to a shitty club, I'll go to a nice club. I listen, and then I pick people that go on to build the biggest bands, biggest singers of all time. That's what I do for a living, and I think it's empathy, believe it or not, that helps.
And putting morality before business. He's very transparent about the reason he does stuff and his shortcomings, and he's also very vocal about the things that he knows he is best at. He's extremely inspirational, one of probably the most cliche people on this list, but I think the reason that Gary Vee has become a cliche is because the things he's saying hold true time and time and time again, and so many people repeat the same things he says that they become cliche. But why are people repeating these things? Why does he repeat these things? Because they're true. Number 8 is George Heaton. A lot of you guys might not know who George Heaton is. He's the founder of Represent Clothing. Now, the reason I mention George Heaton and someone who runs an apparel business is because he just happens to be one of the hardest working people I've probably ever seen. He runs a very successful clothing company. He operates it differently than most, and he gives you the behind the scenes of what it's like operating a company at this caliber when your entire focus is that company.
Why do you think your brand popped off, I guess? Like,
because it's sick.
He is very laser focused. His regimen is crazy. His fitness is crazy. His health is crazy. And he's a very interesting person to follow. One of the best examples here of documenting what it's really like operating a business of this caliber, all while balancing the other aspects of his life like health, fitness, remaining laser focused. Number 9 is Naval Ravikant. Now, Naval Ravikant isn't much of a content creator. He did one very popular podcast with Joe Rogan that is one of the greatest podcasts I've ever seen in my entire life, and everyone else in the podcast space is dying to have him on, but he's just kind of to himself.
Everyone can be rich?
Everyone can be rich.
Everyone.
Here's my thought exercise for you.
Now it seems like we're in an infomercial.
Imagine if tomorrow we could wave a wand and everybody was trained as a scientist or an engineer. Even if you weren't very good, you had enough understanding of computers, you could write some code, you could build some hardware. And don't tell me people can't do it, because they can. That's just the tyranny of soft expectations. Hard sciences, not the social sciences. We would all be done within 5 years. Robots would be doing everything from cleaning toilets to cooking food to flying airplanes to driving Ubers. And what would we be doing? We would be doing all creative jobs to entertain each other and researching science and technology. We would have wonderful lives. So it is really just a question of education.
Now, Naval has a Twitter account that he actively posts on, and that's really big, and that is where the value is found, in my opinion. He is one of the most intelligent people. He comes from the tech space, very, very, very successful person from a monetary aspect, but the insight that he has and the intellect, the profoundness of the tweets and his knowledge and his outlook on the world and his experience is crazy, and it's super, super applicable to somebody in their 20s especially. I think it's very valuable when a high performer spends a lot of time reflecting his past and what he would do if he was younger again, or where he went wrong when he was younger, what he learned at 40 that you might be able to learn at 20. His Twitter is just @Naval, and he's a baller. Last, number 10, but definitely not least, is Mr. Iman Gadzhi. I've mentioned him in a lot of my videos, a lot of my content. I'm a big fan of what he's doing, and I think he is a very, very prominent, if not the most prominent, leader within the business space in your 20s. He's younger than me. He's 23 years old, I think, probably approaching 9 figures in his business, if not past it, who knows, and also happens to be crushing the content space. He's doing everything right. He has a crazy background, and the way that he shows and documents his life will really just get you inspired to hustle and show you that there's no age at which this can't be done. There's no age where success starts. I probably consume the most of his content just because it resonates the most to me, because he's my age and he lives a life full of the things that I happen to like. Now, in the same way that he does, I'm not a big fan of material items. I just happen to be passionate about some of them, like cars, architecture, travel. Those are material items that I just happen to be passionate about. So I don't like them to flaunt them. I like them because I like them. That is one of the reasons I work hard, and so that is something that resonates with me. Find creators that resonate with you, but also be able to pay attention to those whose work ethic resonates with you, whose values resonate with you, whose story resonates with you.
Even for example, this morning, if I don't train hard, I feel like I'm embarrassing not myself, but just them. If I don't give 100%, I feel like I'm an embarrassment to the unit, to the team. I feel a lot of honor and I feel a lot of pride for not just me, but us as a team. I know that I'm not dumb. I know people are very impressed by not just me, but by my team. I know everyone's impressed by my team. When my team shows up and they roll up and they're professional, they're on the ball, they don't make any mistakes, even small mistakes. I'll never mention it in public. If there's ever mistakes or things that should have been done, we're having those conversations in private. We're going, listen, this not only reflects bad on you, it reflects bad on us as a team. And if I fuck up, then we're having those private conversations of like, listen, you making that mistake, or you making that comment that should have been made, or you being sort of out of touch with the conversation here, or maybe disclosing information that shouldn't have been disclosed, that affects all of us as a team.